We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Strong by Design podcast show. This is your host today, Coach Chris Wilson, and I have a really fun, interesting guest on the other side of this conversation today. Looking forward to getting to know him better. As I typically say in a lot of my podcasts, it's about having a conversation that I ordinarily would want to have if it wasn't being recorded, to get to know a little bit more about someone else's life, their path, their journey, their successes, their failures, how they've learned from those things, how they've grown, the choices they've made. And so this is great. I think we'll be able to hit on all areas of being strong in mind and body and spirit, like we like to talk about on the show here. Before I introduce our guest today, I do want to just take a quick second to all our return listeners to say thank you so much for continuing to follow Strong by Design. We're inching up towards our 200th episode, which is always exciting. We're in our 4th year, and we're just gaining more and more momentum and enjoying this. And since we do take turns hosting the show here, our team, I think everyone just is continuing to have a really good time of it and a fun time of it, which is what this is all about. And so thank you for returning to the show. If you're a brand new listener, thank you for choosing Strong by Design. It means a lot to us. It really does. Every new listener matters to us. If at the end of this episode you really found it interesting, don't be shy. Hit that 5 stars. Maybe share it with a friend or family member if you got some value out of this message today. So our guest today, Mr. Ryan Munsey, is no beginner in the realm of podcasting. He's been podcasting longer than we have, since 2015. He's pretty darn good at it. He's had some terrific guests over the years. Loves to focus on all things really just mindset and getting out of your own way, which a lot of us have a tendency to be our worst enemy, our worst critic, and we're cutting ourselves short in a lot of areas of our life. So he is an author. We try to keep it clean here on Strong by Design, so I'll just say F Your Feelings is his book. He's the co-founder of the Better Human Project. He's a sought-after speaker. He has obviously worked with some really high-level people in the world of athletics, other big-time entrepreneurs, executives of all kinds. So he's had terrific impact in the world of leadership and coaching and mindset training, mindset shifts. And so it's really exciting to have him on, because I want to go back deep and find out his story, what's gotten him to this point. So Ryan, thanks so much for being on Strong by Design and taking the time out.
Chris, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity. And, like you said in the intro, I mean, for me, podcasting is about having those conversations that you want to have even off air, and the ability to, connect with people and learn. So, I can totally appreciate, your the way you're coming to this, and looking forward to being on the other side of the interview for once.
Yeah, man. Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's nice just to sit back, not host, but just be a guest, and then just kind of tell your story a little bit. There's not much work on your end, which is always cool. So if you would dial it back several years, a few decades, and go back to some of those yearnings or those life lessons, or what put you on a path to want to be out there in front of people with the message that you have, to try and really help people, whether it was your podcast, your writing, your coaching programs, things like that. What kind of got you to that point?
Yeah, it's something I've never really thought about it until recently. I was a guest last week on a show, and the host asked me, at what point did I realize I wanted to be a coach or a teacher? And was the first time anybody had ever asked me. And, I think for me, I'll go as far back to, like Little League. I grew up playing sports. If you could play it in, your younger days, I did. By the time I got to high school, it was basketball and soccer. I played baseball up until I had to choose between spring sports. And then, I played travel for both of those sports and for the school. Wasn't good enough to play in college. I was lucky enough to go to Clemson University, and as you know, they have some pretty good sports teams. Yeah. So
they're pretty good.
I wasn't quite at that level. I was what we as strength coaches would affectionately refer to as a skinny, fat, slow, weak kid. Every male in my family is diabetic. The only reason that I wasn't at 18 is because I played basketball and soccer all the time. But I was definitely on that trajectory, especially after my first 2 years of school or 2 years of college where I wasn't playing sports that way. For me, I had to fill that competitive void with something. And so I found the weight room, like most people who start lifting, or like maybe like a lot back then, it was Arnold's Encyclopedia. And man, that thing was, it's super thick, but you carried it around everywhere and, memorized it. And so I got into bodybuilding. And of course, once you get into that, it becomes all about nutrition. I wanted to, at that point, I was probably 3 or 4 years in at Clemson. I was on the 6-year plan, so I had plenty of time to change my major. And I wanted to do exercise physiology, but Clemson didn't have that. The closest I could get was food science and human nutrition. And like I said, being the only male in my family who wasn't diabetic, that like metabolism and the inner health and longevity side of things was always very important to me. But also, as I got into bodybuilding, kind of the outer, the aesthetics side of it, the ability to, and as I got into a little bit, as we go down the story, I'll spend some time in the biohacking space. And I always joked with that crowd that, I was biohacking as a bodybuilder before biohacking was even a word. But, the ability to play with inputs to get different outputs in terms of performance, and whether that's plyometrics or dynamic effort training for rate of force development, different things like that. I loved it. I'm a science nerd. I took every science that you can imagine in school, from both a body performance standpoint, but also like cellular health and all those things. And so, really, back to your question of like, what made me want to get out in front of people and spread a message was it started with nutrition. And when I began to learn how we needed to eat, and especially at that point in my journey, it was really about fat loss. And, as you know, we live in a society where most people are overweight or obese. And so you had all this messaging, and you still do, about, how to lose weight, how to get lean, how to burn fat. And everything I saw in the media was wrong. And and even to this day, if I'm in the grocery store and I see somebody's shopping cart, like I just want to grab them and be like, please let me tell you what I know. And so that was really it. When I started to learn how far apart these two things were, right? Like everything you and I know about nutrition, and probably most of your listeners, but then, the chasm between that and like what the average person knows. I wanted to be able to be on a mountaintop and just scream it to people, starting with my parents and my dad and, everybody in my family. And that was really the genesis of kind of getting in front of people and spreading a message.
Yeah, sometimes you can feel like you're the healthiest guy in the room, and that can be really frustrating for the healthiest guy in the room when you see a lack of accountability in like everybody else that you're surrounded by, and it's super frustrating. It's not for a lack of information, that's for sure. I mean, there's more opportunity out there and more information than there's ever been before, yet people are like regressing and getting worse. in the realm of health and fitness?
It's funny because, I mean, I totally agree on the accountability side. But I also see, I mean, I still have people come to me who are confused.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I look at it at scale, and at scale, we have abstraction, right? You lose the individual in the conversation, right? And I think this is one of the things that happens with social media and technology today. Yeah, we can reach a lot more people than ever before, but if you were to write a post and put it on Instagram, or, you know, make a video and put it on YouTube, I know you've probably been coached in a YouTube video to make it as if you were talking to one person, but it's still totally different making those things for social media than it is if you're on a phone call with one individual. And, you know, to that point about information being out there, I mean, you and I know how to sort through information, and we know how to find what's right and you know, what's based in science and what's going to work. But the average person that doesn't have my background, your background, they are still really, really confused. And there is a lot of stuff out there that is, I mean, my dad calls me, he still calls me. And he's like, you know, what's wrong with bananas? I just saw this thing of like, you know, the secret truth about, you know, why you should never eat bananas. And I'm like, Dad, stop. It's clickbait. Like, you know, you've probably seen the thing that he clicked on the bottom of ESPN's website, but it's like, dude, right. And he's not the only one. And there's so many people that they're confused. And I get it. And I do agree that there's definitely an accountability side. And I think it's a different conversation, because the answer is a different answer, right? Or the path to correcting that is just like, dude, do what you're supposed to do. But if you don't know what you're supposed to do, or if you're confused, we do have to have a different conversation. And so I think it's twofold. So, you know, and again, that's one of those things where if it's on social media as a coach, like, you know, if I come into your facility, you don't really know where to begin until you start talking to me, and you can identify, you know, you triage that situation. Like, where can we get the biggest return for our investments and our efforts? And so that's one of the struggles I think that, you know, coaches have with, you know, technology and doing this at scale.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're going to have more impact. I was always told too, like in video creation on YouTube, you know, it's a big platform for us. We've been creators on there for, you know, better part of like 13 years or something, active on our channel. And the one major lesson I learned back when I first started was to just talk to one person on the other side. And it took a moment, because I'm like, well, a lot more than one person's watching. But when you think about it, there's just, people don't watch your video in a group. They watch it by themselves. So you're going to have a lot more impact and a lot more effect when you just talk to that person on the other side of the camera. And that's your language, that's your tone, like everything that you're giving out needs to be kind of directed to an individual rather than to a group at large. And I think that's where people, even from stage, sometimes can have that kind of impact, because the way that they're delivering their message seems very singular, and it seems to just have a lot more of a positive result.
Yeah, that was, I mean, some of the best advice I ever got about being on stage was exactly that. You know, just pick out a few people and talk, you know, directly to them. And, you know, when you're moving around on the stage, it's, you know, talk to this person in the front row, and then pick somebody out over here on the third row and look at them. And, you know, just kind of, it's a lot different when you're having a conversation with one person versus, you know, 30 or 300 or, you know, whatever it might be on YouTube.
Our team would like to thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. And if you're enjoying today's show, please share this episode with at least one friend or family member who will benefit from this message. And please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show.
For somebody like yourself who has something to say, and we are living in a time where you have, countless platforms to say it and to use to reach people. What got you into it's a very different thing to have a voice on a social channel, social platform, to even have a voice in a book and author a book, which is a great accomplishment by, just to put out one book is a huge accomplishment. We could talk, this could be a whole podcast talking about that. But being in front of a room of people, whether that's 25 people or 2,500 people, it's a very different thing to have that kind of live effect or that presence, getting over the fear of that, because it's like one of the number one fears is public speaking. Take us back to that, because that's huge mindset stuff there, how you need to approach that and how you need to get your reps in to actually get good at delivering your message.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, podcasting was, so my father has a really good friend who is a writer. And so this author, writer, friend of my dad, his name is Roland Lazenby. And Roland has written about the NBA and superstars in the NBA since like the Showtime Lakers era. So he's written books about Bird and Magic and Michael. He's written about Kobe. He's written, the last time I talked to him, he was working on a book about LeBron James. I don't know if that one's out yet or not. And so, I mean, he literally followed these teams around for decades. And he gave me advice one time. So he was the guy that, like, if ESPN or Fox needed a soundbite about the NBA, they would go to him. And, he would be able to provide, whatever. And so his advice to me was, become the expert in your industry and be the person that people can go to and, get advice, and you kind of level up by being this person that has all these connections and all this information. And it took me a few years to figure out how to implement that advice. I think he gave that to me when I was starting my gym in maybe 2012. Maybe he gave it to me in 2013. I don't know, but it was early on. And so, like we said earlier, I started podcasting in 2015. So it took a while for me to say, okay, I know how to do what he's talking about. But really, for me, starting the podcast wasn't about having a voice. It was, how can I learn from other strength coaches? And then as the podcast grew in scope, it was, how can I learn from, researchers who are, studying the things that I'm interested in, or things that would be useful to, our audience. And so really podcasting I called it like the greatest hack that you could imagine, because you're learning, right? So it's continuing education for you in your field of study. You're putting out content at the same time. So, in the world of content and, putting stuff out, you're doing that. And you're building an incredible Rolodex. I mean, look at, like you said, you guys are almost at 200 episodes. Look at the people that you have, networked with and now created relationships with. And some of the best advice I've ever been given is, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Or said another way by another person, that relationship capital is our most important form of capital. And so, I saw starting a podcast as a way to kind of work all those things simultaneously. I grew up, we listened to books on tape when I was a kid. So I like consuming information, audio style. I'm kind of ADD, so I like doing things as opposed to like watching a video or, reading a book. Podcasting was just a natural fit for me. It was kind of the platform or the, it was the one that made the most sense. And so that was the start for podcasting. And then as it built and as it grew, you mentioned the book and then speaking. And I think one piece of advice that I would, I guess two things on speaking. Two reasons that I think a lot of people are really nervous. Number one, they're not prepared. Every major talk that I've ever given, I have rehearsed multiple times. In fact, the first few that I gave that were overseas at like big events, I actually filmed myself practicing them, and I shared the video with other people and had other people critique. We were timing it because I only had 20 minutes on stage. And so, by the time like game day came, I mean, you just think about it just like any other sporting event. When game day comes, there are no unknown variables. I'm not changing anything on game day. So all I have to do is go out there and do what I know how to do. And I think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of people make with speaking is they don't practice enough. They don't prepare enough. And then the other side, or I guess the second big piece of advice would be, it's not about you. And again, one of the reasons that so many people are nervous or scared of public speaking is, they're focused on themselves. They're focused on how they're going to be received. And I get it. That's kind of human nature. But, I don't know how deep you guys go in your work or in the podcast. But I mean, that's an ego thing. If I'm worried about how my message is going to be received or how I'm going to be seen, that's me living in the ego. And for me, I always get out of that. And I just think of myself as a vessel. I am merely this, thing that is a conduit that is, delivering this message. I mean, I don't own this information. I mean, I've gotten it. It's other people's research. It's, other people's, case studies and stories. I just compile it in a way that, is informative and entertaining and educational and, telling stories and, whatever it is. And so I'm just the vessel that is delivering the information that people need. And I think that would be another really crucial thing to keep in mind if you're going to be a public speaker is it's not about you, it's about them. And can you make them better? Can you solve their problems? And if you do that, you're going to make an impact, you're going to get invited back, and you're going to get more gigs. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle that way. If you show up, if you're prepared, if you do well, if you help the people, and what job doesn't build and grow when you approach it that way?
Yeah, no, it's a great point to make. It is such a kind of, people are always so focused on themselves, this inward focus. But when you're putting yourself out there like that, it's about like, if you come from a place of service or, I'm here to benefit you all, and you're well rehearsed, you're practiced, you know what you're going to say, the material inside and out. You've gone through it rep after rep after rep. You're right. The only talks I can ever think of in my life where I was like, wow, that wasn't really that good, was somebody who I could tell had not put the reps in. They had never delivered that message before that way in front of people, and so they just didn't have a coherent message. But I've been to so many like live events, and it's inspiring to hear all different types of personalities on stage. Everybody has kind of their own way of delivering a message, and there's no one way to do it or one right way to do it. There's so many different great ways to deliver. You had mentioned very briefly, because you're a Roanoke boy. That's where you're from, Roanoke, Virginia, and we have some connection there because Adam Linkenauger is a big reason for some of the success we've had on our YouTube channel, and I've been to Roanoke several times to meet with Adam for YouTube stuff. I've spent intensive days with him, where it was just one-on-one to help him to really just grab information from him. And he's been on our podcast before, as he has been on yours. But I just thought that was a really cool connection. But you also had your own gym there for a period of time. Take us back to, you opening up your own facility, what that looked like, and what that experience was like.
Yeah. So you mentioned Adam, and I mean, he and I have known each other since we were in high school. And we were super close friends in high school, and he was
speaking of a badass athlete that went to Clemson.
Well, and so that's where I was going with this, is he was a year behind me at Clemson. And he was kind of part of that shift for me to get out of, being the professional frat boy and get back into, lifting. When we were in high school, and I'm going to go ahead and put this on the record, I hope he hears this, but when we were in high school, he could never beat me in one-on-one in basketball. And then he got to Clemson and everything was different. Like I couldn't even get on the same court as him. And I was like, what in the heck happened? Now, he was a year behind me. So his senior year, he, developed quite a bit. I mean, he was high jumping 7 foot in high school as a senior. And so when I started to see the difference in where he was and how much he had surpassed me, I was like, oh, I got to get back, to doing something. And so that would have been my third year. So Christmas break of my third year, I came home and over Christmas break with him, I was like, all right, I'm doing your like winter workouts with you that they send you home with. Like you got to, and I'm asking him, I'm like, what is a snatch? I don't even know what this is. And he's trying to teach me what a power snatch is and the difference between that and like a full snatch. And so, Clemson, I mean, any big school, the non-revenue sports, they don't really care about too much, track being a non-revenue sport. So, I got to kind of learn a lot. And, as long as you're like, he could throw me an extra pair of workout shorts and an extra pair of, an extra orange t-shirt. And as long as I kind of looked like I belonged on the track, like nobody was like, hey, who's that dude? So, I got, at that point, some of the Clemson football players ran the 100 for Clemson. So like learning sprint technique, learning the lifts, I got to see a lot of that performance training stuff firsthand through him or because of him at Clemson. And so, that was 2005 to 8. I spent 2009 in New York. Came back to Roanoke and was a personal trainer at a big box gym for a few years with a buddy of mine who was my training partner. We lifted together. And we just every day when we were lifting, we would always talk about, we want to do this on our own. We can do it better. We read every article on T Nation or Elite Fitness every single day. And that's kind of when all the warehouse gyms were kind of on the rise. And it's funny, this guy that I'm talking about, his name is Chris Edmonds, and he ended up becoming the right-hand man for John Meadows and Mountain Dog Training. And so we were actually paying Meadows for training. Like Chris was like one of his very first clients. And so, we got to do some of those Mountain Dog programs before anybody else did. And one day I just had enough. I was like, I'm starting my own thing. He ended up becoming the training manager at that big box gym. And I started my own place. And, so that was 2012 and, sold it in 2016. But man, it was really cool to be able to, test all those things that you think you can do better. Right. And, I want to train people this way, and it should be able to, we should do it this way and test all your theories, be able to have whatever equipment you want. The name of the gym was House of Strength. And so, with your name of your show here, Strong by Design, I love that. And the reason that the gym was called House of Strength, I love the quote. I think it's Charles Staley that said that strength is the adaptation that leads to all other adaptations. Right. And I don't think I had heard that when I named the gym House of Strength, but, it kind of became an easy way to explain why that was the name of the gym, because, if as well as I do, if you want to, no matter what your goals are, if we get you stronger, if you're a 40-year-old mom or a 55-year-old dad and you want to lose weight, we probably need to get you stronger in a few basic movement patterns. And then as that strength increases, and then we go work capacity, and then you get to do, more of these kind of fat loss type workouts, but you're actually doing more work, you're burning more calories and, so on. And, if you're an athlete and you want to get a college scholarship, and, we want to get you faster and more explosive, which requires you to be able to produce more force. So, it was just, it was a blast. It was a really fun chapter of my life. And yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. To help our show reach more listeners just like you, please let us know how we've changed your life by leaving a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Go to strongbydesignpodcast.com. That's strongbydesignpodcast.com. Let's get back to the show.
There's so many gyms in my past, and they've all had their own environment, own special memories. Gyms that I've worked in, gyms that I've trained in, gyms that I've managed, and they were all great in their own right, but also very different. Obviously now we're in a world where a lot of people are kind of creating their own home gym environments just because of the nature of COVID and stuff, but. I do so enjoy the energy that you can find sometimes in some of these facilities when people are really pushing themselves and you're surrounded by people working at a very high level. It's definitely kind of a cool environment to be surrounded by, and sometimes some of your best workouts are because of that, or just because you're rubbing elbows with somebody, or you see somebody. Maybe somebody older than you that's just, I've talked to a past mentor of mine, a former boss of mine who's up in the Northeast, who has a really amazing performance center. It's called Prentice Hockey Performance. Ben Prentice, he's been doing this kind of work for 25 years. And he works with a lot of NHL players, so a lot of pro level hockey players, but he still has the facility is open to regular men and women. And what's cool is that the pro athletes sometimes are the ones that are inspired by the stay-at-home mom or the executive dad that come in, and they see how hard these kind of everyday people work at trying to get fit and strong, and that inspires them at the pro level to push the extra mile. So it's just such a neat environment. So I'm sure you have so many great memories from that period of your life.
Yeah. And I mean, like you just alluded to, it's really cool. You would think, at least on paper, that it would be, the superstars and the people that do it for a living that inspire the others. But it does. It goes both ways. I mean, if you're a professional athlete or an Olympic athlete, that's your job to train and to get stronger and to get better. And so, they don't have all the same, we'll call it obstacles in their daily schedule, to show up at the gym and do the things that, the mom or the dad, the executive or whatever are doing. And so, yeah, it is. It's really cool. I always thought that, I mean, let's face it, back then, everybody wanted to be Joe DeFranco, right? You wanted to train, pro athletes. And I always, took a lot of pride in our, young athlete program. We had softball players and football players and, people that got full rides to, SEC schools and, kids that wouldn't have gone to college otherwise, going to play sports. And those are really cool stories. But I mean, the ones that really stand out to me the most as, rewarding and impactful were, the women who admittedly skipped gym class when they were in high school. They were never active, and they would skip gym class, and now they're competing in strongman events and winning medals at 5Ks and marathons, and and now not only are they doing it for themselves, but they're teaching their family members And it's now becoming this domino effect of, it's not just about their goals that they had coming in of, hey, I want to lose weight or, feel better. But now I'm learning, I've got a better relationship with food. And now, my daughter is going to have a better relationship with food because I know how to eat and I can teach them this. And, my daughter's not going to be that person that skips gym class. And, those were the ones that I think were, they sneak up on you. Like, that's not the one that you think, especially for a dude like us, when we started gym, that's not the one where you're like, oh, this is what it's going to be about. And then you get into those and you're like, oh, wow, like that's the one that, like those are the ones that you remember the most, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Totally. There's so much to learn from that. And that it doesn't matter what your past is. If you could have gone maybe decades without a focus on your, investing in your own physical health. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up in your 40s and you're going, you know what, now's the time. And the turnaround, I mean, within a period of a year, what you can do for yourself if you invest the time and the effort into it and you're just consistent. Amazing how you can just change everything in your life just by focusing on, like you said, getting stronger and just showing up. There's so much there. And I've been inspired by men and women 50 to 80 years old for a better part of 2 decades. So it's pretty awesome. So obviously you had you have the podcast world that you're in with the Better Human Project, and you're kind of taking a little bit of a break from that right now. And you've had anyone, the podcast is still obviously active. There's still a lot of episodes there, great conversations that Ryan has had with a lot of experts, as he's shared earlier in the conversation. But you're kind of moving in a little bit of a different direction, a little bit of a pivot in your life. And I'd love for you to kind of go down that road and share with our listeners kind of what you're transitioning into as we speak.
Yeah. So it's funny, I guess, as I mentioned, I sold the gym in 2016 and kind of got away from the health and fitness stuff for a few years. And that was, when I wrote the book, and I always take my cue from how you guys, as the podcast host, say the name of the book. So F Your Feelings.
No, we're a family show. We keep it clean. What do you mean?
Every show's, I respect that. Yeah. Every show is a little bit different. Right. And so, when I left the gym space, I was really frustrated by, I was just really tired of writing the perfect diet or writing the perfect workout, and people coming to me and saying, hey, this is what I want, right? I want to lose weight. I want to do this. I want to get a scholarship, blah, blah, blah. Right. And, you roll out the red carpet and you say, okay, here's our plan. This is where you are. This is where you want to be. Here's how we get there. And then the people come in on Monday morning and they're like, well, how many burpees do I have to do to undo all the margaritas that I drank and tacos that I ate? And I'm like, why are your actions always incongruent with your goals? And so I'm not saying that that's why I left the gym, but when I wrote the book, those were the things that I was really the questions that I was trying to answer, right? If you look around, I've had the good fortune of being able to, as you mentioned, have conversations with, what we would call high performers, whether that's an Olympic athlete, a pro athlete, a tier 1, military guy, but also on the theory side, researchers and academics and, cognitive neuroscientists. And so to be able to marry and kind of identify, okay, here's theory, here's application, this is what these high performers are doing. You look at successful people, success leaves footprints, right? What are all these people who are having success doing that people who are not reaching their goals are not doing? And, taking this research and saying, like, what's going on in our heads? And so that's really where the book came from. And it was, how do I get out of the X's and O's and more into, helping people master the space between their ears. And, that led me into, as you mentioned earlier, some of the leadership stuff and working on, it's been a wild few years since the book came out, because I never realized that it would be applicable to such a wide variety of pursuits. I mean, I've had churches contact me. I've had people who are helping people through addiction. I've had trauma therapists. I've had, of course, military, law enforcement, and then you have athletes, and then you have business people. And what I've discovered, or, I guess the realization I've had is, as I'm looking at all these things that are seemingly unrelated, I intentionally tried to create a user's manual for being human. And so all these people, the thing they have in common is they're humans and they're trying to pursue goals. And so it doesn't really matter what your application is. If you are a human, the stuff that's in F Your Feelings is going to help you understand what's going on between your ears and how we can, manage our thoughts and our feelings and our decisions so that we can move closer to our goals, right? And I sign, most of the books that I sign, I write, may your actions align with your values. Back to your question, that it's funny, and now it's kind of coming full circle, and we're getting back, or I guess my work is getting back into more of the health and the fitness stuff. I've been away from it for a few years, but one of the hobbies that I've picked up is backcountry hunting. I grew up hunting and fishing in Virginia, but I've been introduced to hunting out west in the Rocky Mountains. I love bow hunting. And so, pursuing big game animals with a bow and arrow in wide open spaces requires a whole new skill set, and both in terms of, physical capabilities. I was always that guy, and you will probably appreciate this more than most people that I say this to because of your background and strength. But I was always the guy that made the joke, anything over 8 reps is cardio.
Right.
Well, now I'm an endurance athlete. Right. So joke's on me. But it's, I've had to make that shift, and it's been fun because as I've had to learn that, it's given me more that I can draw on and teach others who are into this. It's like you said earlier with, once you kind of know things, like I can never not be a strength coach. I can never not see somebody struggling with physical capacity and just not offer them something. Right. And so, and then on the nutrition side of this pursuit, the foods, I am more than happy to admit that I'm probably the weirdest, strictest person that most people will ever meet when it comes to what I will and won't put in my body. And the stuff that's out there for, backpacking is just not what I'll put in my body. So my hunting partner and I have had to make a lot of stuff on our own. We've had to get really creative. We've had to do a lot of looking. And we always joke like, hey, we should just make our own food company. And so now we are. And it's called Fuel the Pursuit. And, we're going to be making the world's healthiest freeze-dried backpacking meals, pasture-raised, wild-caught meats, organic everything, even the spices, with a slant towards keto for 2 reasons. One, as I mentioned, we're more endurance-focused. And for the second reason, most people struggle to get enough calories on these pursuits, and it's a lot easier to pack calories when they're fats as opposed to carbs. And when you've got to carry everything for 7 or 10 days on your back, there's 9 calories in a gram of fat. There's 4 calories in a gram of carbohydrates. So 9 divided by 4 is 2.25, literally 2.25 times the amount of calories, gram for gram, if you're going fats versus carbs. And so it just makes total sense that if you've got to carry this, and these are people that are weighing every ounce. And it's not just hunters. It's, climbers, kayakers, backpackers, thru hikers, camping, anybody that is what we would call a mountain athlete, ultra marathon runners, things like this. And so that's why we called it Fuel the Pursuit, because it's literally the company is pursuit agnostic. We don't care what you do. We all have this love for adventure in the outdoors. And if it's self-supported and human powered, we've got training and fueling strategies that are going to help you. So really fired up, as you can tell, about kind of getting this thing up and running. And so starting a food company and getting involved in this has kind of forced the podcast to take a back seat for a little while.
Right. Well, understandably, but as we were saying kind of before we hit record on this conversation, in life sometimes, things unexpectedly kind of, erupt or take place in your life or ignite, or there's an opportunity there and it's something that you're passionate about that maybe you weren't even spending any time or energy thinking about or considering just a year prior or less, and things just kind of fall on top of you and you got to make a decision. And ultimately it's just about trying things out and being a little bit adventurous and taking risks. And I think so many of us live in the world of safety and a risk-free, comfortable environment. But I applaud you for, trying these new things and going different routes, and exploring it. Because if you don't at least test the waters, then you're going to maybe have regrets or, be upset with yourself, in a short period of time that you didn't at least give it a go.
I think that's one of the biggest motivators for me is, I never want to look back and wish that I had done something or wish that I had gone for it. That's a big driver for me. Also got some really good advice from a friend, and this was like right before I started my gym. And it's probably the thing that like pushed me over the edge and made me quit and start my own gym. And he's like, man, you live paycheck to paycheck now. I mean, you work for somebody else and you hate what you do, right? Like, why not live paycheck to paycheck and work for yourself and do what you want to do? And I was like, you probably shouldn't have told me that, because he was also my boss. And I was like, next time I talked to him, I was like, hey, dude, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. But that was a thing where it was really good advice because, that there's a struggle and a growth curve that when you start your own business, you've got to get out of survival mode. But it's like that guy said to me. I mean, if it's paycheck to paycheck and it's what you love and you're working for yourself, you don't have to answer to anybody else. I'm really fortunate that I do work for myself. So if I want to take 2 weeks off, I don't have to ask anybody. I got some bad news today. My dad had to go to the hospital. And so, if I need to go visit my dad in the hospital tomorrow, like I don't have to ask anybody for time off. I don't have to worry about that. And, maybe I listened to too much Rage Against the Machine when I was a kid, but like, that's a really important thing to me is that autonomy and being able to, we've kind of alluded to this, but like, you get one life. Like this is your shot at this thing. Like, I don't want to ask for permission every step of the way. I want to do what I want to do. And if there's something I want to, put my energy and efforts into, then I'm going to do it. And, I can't, like, I've never regretted taking a shot. Right. And you always hear, what is it? The thing with the nurses where they talk to people on their deathbed and the thing they regret most is, not having more fun, not spending more time with family, not doing the things they wanted to do. Like, well, okay, so I'm going to focus on those things.
Right. That's right. Yeah. People aren't in their last moments of their lives going over like all the unpaid bills and, all the things that stress us out and give us anxiety and worry in today's life, right? those aren't the things flashing through your mind. It's the relationships that you have. It's the untapped, potential, the serving others, giving back to others, doing these things that give you purpose and help feed that passion for life. Those are the things that you're going to be kind of going through in that mental Rolodex. Not all the checked boxes that we're all kind of that we're living life by right now. At least a lot of people, So, but I think it's definitely a great message that you're sending out there. It's just to give things a try in your life. If they seem like something, it's like not just a dream or a wish. It's something that you've had deep conversations with someone else. It's something that you've explored on paper and thought about and probably dreamt about and prayed about and all these things. And it seems like a real viable option. Then you're going to give it a go and you're going to see what happens over the next few years. But maybe it'll also might lead you to something else too. So some things are just stepping stones to kind of the next big thing too. So it's
absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of like, it's like a mashup of two different, one is the quote about the man in the arena. Right. And it's like, you kind of have to be in the arena. You have to be doing the stuff, and opportunities present themselves. Right. When you are out there doing it, things just kind of show up. And then that's, like I said, it's a mashup of two things, right? One is kind of the arena. The other is that line from the book, The Alchemist, right? And when you're on your authentic path, the whole universe conspires to help you. And it's like those two things just together just explain it, right? And it's just get on that path, start doing the stuff. Yep, there's going to be some shit in the way. There's going to be challenges and adversity. Just don't stop moving. Just keep moving forward. Keep going. Be relentless. Show up. And that's where strength comes in very handy, right? Mental strength and, physical strength and that fortitude, that resilience to just keep going. And, everything, I couldn't have, in 2012, when I kind of started the entrepreneurial journey, I couldn't have predicted where, what 2014 or 15 or 16 would look like, or any of the opportunities that I've had since then, or what my life looks like now. But I mean, none of it would have happened if I hadn't taken that jump and pursued the things that I'm passionate about. And so, I mean, I think anytime somebody asks me if they should do it, I'm going to say, yeah, do it.
Heck yeah. Yeah. That's excellent, man. Where can our listeners right now, please give us again your upcoming venture here with what you're doing with your nutrition on the food side of things, and maybe just some social channels where people can find you.
Yeah, so the name of the new business is Fuel the Pursuit, and we'll have all the social channels. It's at Fuel the Pursuit _, and then we'll have a specific hunting channel for people that hunt as well. And I guess kind of the hub of everything would be, the website for that would be fuelthepursuit.com. My website is ryanmunsey.com. I'm probably the most active on Instagram, and it's at Ryan Munsey _ Podcast is Better Human Project. Definitely check those out. And at some point, I'll probably get back to doing some episodes there. And then, of course, the book is F Your Feelings. Yeah. And I would, if you haven't read it, it'd be great if you did. I think it'll help.
Yeah, we'll be sure to share all of that information in the description area of this podcast. Ryan, it's been a real treat getting to know you and sharing your story with our listeners. Thank you so much for making this time.
Oh, my pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. It's been great. Thank you, listeners. Really appreciate you. Of course, every podcast has kind of its own lessons, right? Its own takeaways and nuggets. I think there were several in this conversation with Ryan today. Go ahead and hit that 5-star rating. Leave a review if you would. We greatly appreciate it. It means so much to us because that's what helps us show up a little bit more in the various podcast platforms and makes us stand out above other podcasts. And share this episode with somebody who could benefit from all the terrific information Ryan shared today. We thank you so much. We'll have another episode next week, as always, here on Strong by Design. You take care of yourself. God bless you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.